morning. Welcome to Flatirons Online. We know that our online community is huge. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments section. Let us know where around the country, even around the world, you're tuning in from. And if you're here in the Denver metro area, we would love to see you in person at one of our campuses. We have 5 locations in the Denver metro area, up and down the Front Range. If you need help getting connected, reach out to us. You know, if today's message really sits with you, like it, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let us know what impact Flatirons is having in your life. Let's move on with today's message. Thanks again for joining us.
Well, what a pleasure it's been for me to come here. And when I saw that video, I didn't know they were going to show that video. That's exactly what I want to talk about today, is people reaching out to lost people to find Jesus. And you know, for some of you, you've been complaining about the heat of the summer. You just need to repent of that. I'm from Phoenix. I'm coming here to escape. Really, we don't have to preach about hell in Phoenix because we live through it every year. I want to talk about what it means to find significance in life today. Because a lot of people, they have success in life, they don't have significance. So let me start with this question. It's kind of a pop quiz question. What do the following people have in common? Marilyn Monroe, Princess Diana, Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, Robin Williams. All of them are super successful. They're the beautiful people, they're the rich people, and yet deeply depressed, even with suicidal ideation. How can it be that someone that beautiful, that successful, that wealthy doesn't want to live in this world anymore? Because success and significance are not the same thing. And a lot of people are down and outers. We look at them, we kind of feel sorry for them, but there's a lot of people also who are up and outers. And we envy them, and we shouldn't. As I was researching for this talk, I ran across a guy by the name of Clay Cockrell. He's a psychotherapist that works with the uber wealthy. And it happened early in his career. A billionaire came to him and said, I got all these problems. He said, what kind of problems would a billionaire have that he needs to go see a psychotherapist? A lot of them, it turns out. And because the billionaire circle is so tight, after Clay helped the first billionaire, another billionaire buddy is saying, man, I got these problems. I don't know who to talk to. And he goes, oh, I got a guy. And then he helped that guy. And then another billionaire said, I need someone to talk to. And he goes, oh, I got a guy. And so he found himself doing his whole career with the uber wealthy. And he narrowed it down to 4 primary problems that the uber wealthy have. The first problem that they have is mistrust. Because when you have that much money, you don't really have friends. You don't know who likes you for you or who likes you for what they can get out of you. And when you don't have any friends, man, that's depressing. And when everybody wants something from you, you begin to insulate yourself, to protect yourself from the leeches. And when you insulate yourself, you also isolate yourself. And here's the problem with isolation. Some of you are experiencing it. That significance does not come from the success you have in your career. It comes from the relationships you have in your life. And when you insulate and isolate, you lose significance. That's the third problem. You have all this money, all this fame, all this success, but you don't feel like there's any significance to your life, to what you're doing. Here's the final problem they have. Money is toxic. It's always toxic. This is one of the most dangerous things you can have. It'll wear away at your soul because you begin to prioritize things that are temporary. And you know what people who have money want? More money. Not a lot more, just a little more. And when we think that success is going to make us happy, what we want with success is not a destination. There's not a destination of success. It's an aspiration. So if you aspire to success, it doesn't matter how much success you have, you always aspire to a little bit more. And when success for you is an aspiration, not a destination, you will never find yourself there. Now, I've experienced that. Some people would look at me and say, well, I have a modicum of success. I'm a teaching pastor at a large church in Phoenix. I've written some books. You know what I look at when I look in a mirror? I don't see a successful person. I don't see myself as a teaching pastor of a large church. I look at other churches and I go, well, there's a senior pastor there. There's a teaching pastor that has a little more recognition than me, a deeper podcast, more likes on social media. I don't look at the books I've written as success. I say, well, somebody, like they wrote more books and their books have sold more. This is how stupid it is for me. Like I turned 60 this year. And when I go to I know you thought I was 40. When I go, you didn't. Unless I live to 120, I'm past middle age, right? I go to the gym and I'm working out in the gym and I kind of look into the corner of my eye at what other guys are lifting to see if you're over 60, you should never be looking at another guy in the gym of what he's lifting, right? Unless your initials are RFK or Jim Burgen, like forget about it. But we get this insatiable lust for more recognition from success. I want to ask you a question. This is the question of the day. How will you measure your life? That's the title of a book written by a Harvard business professor. He teaches these up and coming students. These are Harvard students, the smartest, the richest, the most potentially successful. But what he wants to tell them is, you need to know how you will measure your life because success and significance don't run on the same track. People going after success use people to build their careers. People pursuing significance use their careers to build people. And that's the difference. And a man that we meet in Luke chapter 19, if you have a Bible, feel free to follow along. He was the most financially successful person that Jesus ever met. His name is Zacchaeus, and he's from a small town called Jericho. Actually, it wasn't a small town back then. It was a city. Chapter 1 of Luke 19, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. Now, I need to geek out for just a second about Jericho because it's a super unique place. It is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world, as far as we know. And if you go to Jericho, it has this, like in the middle of a desert, it's an oasis because there are natural springs there. And in front of one of the springs is this mosaic that says, it is the lowest city on earth, 1,300 feet below sea level. So a super unique place. And this particular mosaic is right in front of the fountain, the natural spring, which is right in front of an archaeological site. You can pay $5, go into the archaeological site and see a bunch of dirt. But it is the dirt that Joshua walked around with the armies of Israel. Remember the story? 7 times they walked around and then they blew the trumpets and the walls came tumbling down. That's this spot. And you know what it looked like in Jesus' day? It looked like a mound of dirt. It was an archaeological site in Jesus' day as well. Because the city would be destroyed, they would rebuild it. Destroy, rebuild. Why? Because it's an oasis in the desert. And when Jesus shows up, he's entering the city, and there's these 2 blind guys that are kind of on the outskirts of town. You know, it was near Passover time. In fact, Jesus is going up to Jerusalem for Passover, which is 1 week from this day. And on that Passover, Jesus would hang on a cross. This is literally the very last chance that Zacchaeus will have to see Jesus. These 2 blind guys, they don't know it. It's their last chance too. And they cry out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on us. And all the people, like the crowds, like thousands of people, pilgrims going up to Passover, thousands who lived in Jericho, they're going, shh, shh, shh. He didn't have time for you. He's an important man. And these guys, they don't care. They need to be healed and they think he can do it. Jesus, have mercy on us. And Jesus stops to the astonishment of the crowd and he heals these blind guys. You should have been there. A party broke out. Like 2 blind guys, they start dancing around and everyone's going, wow, he's a healer. And he's going through the town. Everyone's lining Main Street. You can just feel the bodies, the pressure, the energy. And one guy desperately wants to see Jesus. Verse 2, now a man named Zacchaeus was there. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. Let me retranslate that. He was loaded. Now, concentrate on 2 words, tax collector and Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, I don't know what happened to him, but Jesus actually knows who this guy is. Maybe by reputation, maybe because divine knowledge, but Zacchaeus wants to see Jesus. I don't know why. Because there's a lot of wealthy people that you would never suspect have any interest in Jesus, but they do. There's something about them that has this vacuum, this God-sized hole in their heart. And nobody else can relate to the way they live. Nobody else sees it, but they have this need for God in their life. He was a chief tax collector, not just a tax collector, a chief tax collector. And Jericho, because it's an oasis in the desert, it's the crossroads of the ancient world. It was, think Chicago or New York or LA. It was a commercial hub. And this guy is collecting taxes. Now, he was Jewish, but he's collecting taxes for the Roman government. Why would a person do that? Why would a person become a traitor to their own country? There's a backstory there, and we don't really know what it is. But if you've watched the TV series, The Chosen, I love how they portray Matthew, the tax collector, one of Jesus' followers, kind of on the spectrum. He's really good with numbers, but terrible with people. Everybody hates him, but he dresses really nice. Rich people sometimes feel like that. Now, Matthew, he, as a tax collector, would have to bid for a specific location. And the way it works is, instead of the Roman government saying, here's how much money we need from this area, people of that area who were disgruntled or dismantled or disrespected, those people would bid for the privilege of collecting taxes from their own people to give to the Roman government. And it went to the highest bidder. So by default, taxes are always going to be the highest possible taxes. And you know how Matthew made his living? By collecting more than he had promised to the Roman government. And he has military force behind him. He has the law behind him. So he can use police protection and corrupt politics to extort, physically threaten, blackmail, and beat those to give every ounce of their extra income. And that's how Matthew made his living, why he was hated. Zacchaeus is not Matthew. Zacchaeus is Matthew's boss's boss. He doesn't just collect taxes, he collects tax collectors, and he was despised. And though he could bully people in the IRS office, he can't bully them on Main Street of Jericho. And he wants to get a front row seat, but no one's letting him. And the text says he was a short man, so they go, look, buddy, you're not getting to the front of the line. Elbow him right in the forehead. Poor little guy. He was trying to get a look at Jesus, but being a short man, he could not see over the crowd. Now, this may fall in the category of TMI, but at the church I serve in Phoenix, we have 15 different campuses. And I visit them as much as I possibly can. But a lot of people, I'll show up on a campus, they've never met me in person before. You wanna know what the most common comment I get from people at my church? It is not, we love your sermons. No, what they say is, we thought you were taller. Yeah, I love you too. I'm huge on a Jumbotron. In real life, I'm 5'8". Now you think that's short, but here's a fact, irrelevant fact, but the average height of a male in the world today is 5'6", so I'm actually tall. You abnormally elongated people who can't fit on airplanes, I just feel sorry for you. In their world, Zacchaeus was a short man, but the average height there was under 5'4" for a man. So he might be topping out at 4'11". Like he's a pipsqueak. But he's got a lot of power, but he's got no height advantage. Verse 4, so he ran on ahead and climbed into a sycamore tree to see him because Jesus was going to pass that way. Now, if you go to Jericho today and you have a tour guide, they're undoubtedly going to drive you by this sycamore tree. And they're going to tell you, this is the very tree that Zacchaeus climbed. But sycamore trees only live max for 400 to 500 years, so they're all lying to you to get tips. I'm just saying. But it was a tree like this, and you can look at the limbs. They're big, thick limbs, low to the ground, so a short guy like Zacchaeus can shimmy on up the tree, way beneath his dignity. The leaves are broad and thick, so it's a great place to hide. So Zacchaeus goes out on a limb to see Jesus. I know that he wants to see Jesus. What he doesn't know is that Jesus wants to see him. And now I want to talk to you, because some of you snuck into church today. Maybe you're on the West Campus, or maybe in Longmont. Maybe you're watching online or on demand. And nobody would guess it about you, because there's nothing in your present or in your past that would lead other people to believe that you're interested in God, because you are desperately interested in God. But what you need to know today is that God is more interested in you than you've ever been in him. And what other people may not recognize or appreciate, Jesus does. And as Jesus passes by that way, verse 5, he looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately, because I must stay at your house today." Zacchaeus, Jesus called him by name. And Jesus is calling some of you by name right now. You've not yet given your life to Jesus because you're not sure that the people around Jesus would welcome you. Forget about what they say. That's why that video was so striking to me, and why Jim is so fascinating to me. Of all the pastors I know, and I know a bunch, I know of no pastor more committed to outsiders coming to Jesus. Whether you're a down and outer, like the two blind men Jesus healed, or an up and outer like Zacchaeus, your pastor has the heart of Jesus to seek and save the lost. That's what this church is all about. And if that's not what you're about, go find a different church. Because this church, Flatirons, is always going to be open to those who are not opened to in other places. This is a place where you can call home. This is a place where you will be welcomed as you are, not to stay as you are, but to come as you are, to the one who can take you where nobody else can take you. Imagine Zacchaeus' shock up in the tree. I mean, he's really out at him. Like, Zacchaeus, points him up in the tree. He's like up there in a three-piece suit and like way beneath his dignity up in the limb. And he has no clue that Jesus even knows who he is. When Jesus calls him by name, and the most stunning thing is not calling him by name, but saying, "I must come to your house today." The Greek word is an imperative. It is necessary. In other words, Jesus doesn't just see Zacchaeus. He doesn't just know Zacchaeus. Jesus says, "Zacchaeus, I need you." What? What would Jesus need me for? He doesn't need my talent. He doesn't need my success. He doesn't even need my significance. Like, what would Jesus ever need you for? In 1 week from today, I can't prove this, but I'm pretty confident that Zacchaeus followed Jesus all the way up to Jerusalem, stayed with him as long as he could. In 1 week from today, Zacchaeus would see this man pinned to a tree for the least and the lost and the likes of you and the likes of Zacchaeus. What would Jesus need Zacchaeus for? Because Jesus will never go to Jericho again. He would never connect with the people that are about to come to Zacchaeus' house. There are people invited, like, who do you think Zacchaeus invites? Not the Pharisees, not the religious people who have heard Jesus preach time and time and time again. It's the kind of people the only kind of people that would hang around with a person like Zacchaeus. Maybe they just wanted Zacchaeus for what they could get out of him, but it didn't matter. He had influence over their lives, and Jesus didn't. That's why Jesus needs you. There's some people that you could touch that Jesus wants to touch, but will never touch unless you escort them into his presence. That's why Jesus needs Zacchaeus. In verse 7, and when the people saw this, they all complained. Yeah, that's not a surprise. He's gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. You ever meet Christians like that? Yeah, I have a problem with Christians like that. Because Jesus didn't come for those who have their act together. He came for those who are broken and heartbroken. In fact, in another instance, Jesus made his point really clear. This is why he came. This is from Jesus, not me. When Jesus heard this, he said, "Those who are healthy do not need a physician, but those who are sick do. Go and learn what this saying means. I want mercy and not sacrifice, for I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners." I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine. His name's Jason. He and our mission pastor, Larry, and I, the three of us are like the Three Musketeers. We hang out all the time. The first time I met Jason, it was just kind of like he reached out and said, "Hey, can we go to lunch? I have something I want to talk to you about." I didn't know him from Adam. I would later learn that he's the largest producer of body armor in the world. The dude's got wealth, the dude's got success. But at that time, he lacked significance. He had been through a divorce that was ugly, and he was pretty broken up about it. He wasn't sure he was being a great dad to his kids. He had done some things in his past, so you can only imagine. And he was broken about it. But he was tithing. That's a command in the Bible that we give 10% of our income to God. That's like an expectation. And he had 10% set aside, but here's his question. We go to lunch and he goes, "Look, I'm giving $30,000 to the church every year, and I'm giving $120,000 to a Catholic charity." And he explained, he said, "The Catholic charity is what saved me." He was, as people called him, a bastard son of a single mom. His dad, he was a product of an affair. His dad wouldn't even claim him. And so he was a hellion by a mom who couldn't control him. And the local Catholic school took him in and waived the tuition fees for the school. And because of that, he graduated from high school. That's all he ever graduated from. Because of that, when he was in trouble with the law, he had someone to advocate for him. And they saved him. So he said, "I'm giving $120,000 to a Catholic charity, a Catholic school. Am I tithing?" To which I said, "No. Tithe goes to the local church." Now, I told you I'm 5'8". He is bigger than me, but not just taller than me. He's like twice as thick as I am and could squash me like a bug. So I don't know where I got the courage to say that, but here's what I said: "Jason, if that's how much money you're making, then you can afford to double tithe. Keep giving to the Catholic charity that saved your life, but why not give to the church where you are being fed the words of life?" And big old Jason, who could beat me to a pulp, he goes, "That makes sense." And we began this journey of generosity for him. He became the head of this organization, the head of the board of this organization that rescues girls from human trafficking. But we needed a bulldog like him to really get it on track. He's done so much. I don't have time to tell you all the things that he's done. He's still rough around the edges. He texted me just last night. I was at dinner with my brother, and he texted me, he said, "Hey, a buddy of mine, he doesn't go to church, he's far from God, but his dad actually comes to CCV, and his dad likes listening to me preach. And his dad is dying, probably today." He said, "Is there any way that you could just send a voice message and pray for his father on his deathbed?" I would never get that opportunity if it weren't for a Jason. Because there's no way I would be connected to those people. So I left the restaurant, sent the video, and let the Lord do what the Lord does. But the Lord could not have done that without Jason. Do you understand? We were sitting at breakfast one morning, and Larry, the missions pastor, he was super emotional. He doesn't get that like that very often, but he had an opportunity to rescue 100,000 children from poverty. There's a price tag on that. The price tag for this organization to rescue 100,000 children permanently from poverty, we're talking education, clothes, housing, the whole nine, was $15 million. And he was just overwhelmed by this. And Jason, because of his journey of generosity, his business is worth 10 times what it was even 5 years ago when we first met in our relationship. And Jason at breakfast said, "I'll put the first $1 million down," just like that. Now, I can't do that. And most of you can't do that. But Jason could do that. And for him, it wasn't an obligation. It wasn't even a favor of a friend. It was a responsibility to do for God because of what God had done for him. And that's exactly the trajectory of Zacchaeus. It says in verse 8, Zacchaeus stopped and said, Lord, look, Lord, half of my possessions I now give to the poor. And if I've cheated anyone out of anything, I'm paying back 4 times as much. That was that day, at the party, that moment, he makes this declaration in front of all his friends. Like, half of what I have, I'm gonna give it to the poor. I have 10,000 acres, 5,000 go to the poor. I have 10,000 donkeys, 5,000 we'll sell and give to the poor. I have all of this wealth. I have $10 million. I'm gonna give $5 million to half. I'm gonna cut my wealth in half today and give it to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody, what are the chances of a tax collector cheating someone? Like 110%. Why 4 times the amount? This is so interesting. He is actually quoting an Old Testament law. Here's a dude that you would never suspect read the Bible is quoting a law from Exodus. He's, when no one is looking, late at night, he's been poring over scriptures and letting God speak to him. Here's the law. If a man steals an ox or a sheep and kills it or sells it, he must pay back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the 1 sheep. So if it's an ox, it's 5 times the amount. If it's a sheep, it's 4 times the amount. He chooses 4 times the amount. Why? Because he's cheap? No, he just gave half of his wealth to the poor. He's not cheap. He's shrewd. And what Zacchaeus is recognizing right now, right here, is that the people I've cheated, they're not ox to be led to a slaughter. They are sheep in the flock of God. He is seeing other people differently now. Prior to this moment, prior to meeting Jesus, he used people to build his career. And now he's using his career to build people. That is the transfer from success to significance. And so Jesus replies, this today, salvation has come to this household because he too is a son of Abraham. Now that title, son of Abraham, that's as kosher as a dill pickle. Like this guy that everyone saw as an outsider, Jesus accepts as an insider. Why? Was it because he gave away his money? No. It wasn't what he did that bought him salvation. It is salvation that changed his perspective, not only about his possessions, but about people. And when you see Jesus for who he is, then you begin to see other people the way God sees them. And here's the beauty of it. When you can see people the way God sees people, you can see yourself the way God sees you. You're a child of Abraham. 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 And it's not what you've done that makes you no longer a child of Abraham. You can't change who you are. And so many of us, and this is the seduction of success, and why success is never satisfying, because we always know what's in here. We always know what's in the backpack that we carry with us. And we think that what we have done determines who we are. But Jesus goes back before your birth to your conception. Psalm 139. God knit you together in your mother's womb. That's who you are. And everything you've done from that moment till now doesn't undo what God did when he made you. You are a child of Abraham. And when you see that, then you begin to see other people the way God does. Again, I can't prove this, but I'm pretty sure that Zacchaeus followed Jesus right up to Jerusalem, right to the cross. And if he did, he would have seen the man that changed his life pinned to a tree. And maybe he thought that this is the end of an era, this is the end of the dream. I'll go back to what I used to be. But if you really see Jesus on the cross, you recognize that's how He undoes all that you've done. Like, what you've done does matter. There are consequences for the lives that we've lived. But it's not up to you to undo the consequences, because that's already been undone by the cross of Jesus Christ. So that the people you've hurt, the people you've used, the abuse that you've received and then passed on to others, that's all paid for by the cross of Christ. So that you can accept the statement of Jesus, today salvation has come to your house. You're a child of Abraham. If you go to a life coach, they're probably gonna tell you, you need to have a purpose statement with your life. I'm gonna tell you, why don't you just borrow Jesus' purpose statement for your life? Because here it is, verse 10. This is why Jesus came. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. That's why I love this church. Not all churches have that heart. Not all churches have a pastor that bleeds for the lost. Not all churches create space and experiences that will make people feel comfortable who are uncomfortable in other religious spaces. 1 week from this moment, Jesus will be on a cross. 1 week from our moment today, your pastor is going to be back on this stage with this very same heart. This is what drives him. And I just want to challenge you. It's a simple challenge. Let this drive you. That your life statement is to seek and to save the lost. Because it doesn't matter how much money you have, how many titles, how many likes. It is not until you are used by God to reach people that God will never reach without you, that you will find your full significance. I'm just gonna ask you, who are you gonna bring next week to hear this unprecedented, unparalleled, open invitation to the one who can see past your past? Holy Father, we're so grateful that you didn't see what we did. You saw through it. You saw what you did when you created us. And because of that, what we did can be undone through the death of Jesus because of what he's done on our behalf. And because of that, we're not earning our salvation by using our resources for others. We're expressing our salvation, that we will be as giving and open with others as you have been with us. Lord, would you bless Flatirons Church? Would you bless our pastor, Jim Burgen? And when he preaches this message on this stage next week, would you open the floodgates of heaven and crash the gates of hell? It's in his name that we pray, amen.
Thanks for tuning in to Flatirons Church Online. We hope you enjoyed it today and that God moved in a mighty way. We want to let you know that we have brand new content coming out all the time, including live streams every single Sunday. And if you don't want to miss out on any of that content, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. We also want to let you know that if you believe in what Flatirons is doing, and that's to reach a lost and broken world, there's a give button that you can hit to take next steps there. Well, we hope you enjoyed it, and we can't wait to see you next time.